What's up everybody, welcome to Twisted Angle Garage. In this video I'm going to show you how to add an electric cooling fan to your classic car. We're working on an 83 Chevy C10 in this episode, but it's going to be basically the same for any classic car. It is one of the best things you can do for your old ride. It will thank you so much for putting a better fan on there to help it cool a lot better, and it will take drag off the engine. So it's pretty simple. You buy a fan, buy a relay controller system, and we just have to wire it in. So make sure you like, subscribe, share with your friends, and follow along. Here we go. The first problem is you can see there's like 10 inches of distance between the fan and the radiator. Without a shroud on here, that's incredibly too much distance. This is going to suck air from in front of the radiator and not through the radiator. And that just won't cool very efficiently, especially with an engine that's as radical as this one. So first thing we need to do is get this old fan off of here. We need to loosen the belt on the alternator and the power steering, and then we can take these bolts out. We'll loosen the bolts first. And then we can take the bolts out, take this fan and this spacer off, and then get shorter bolts that are the same thread pitch, and just bolt them back on and make sure the pulley's good and tight. And then we can move on to putting the electric fan in. So let's get this off here first. Don't take these bolts out, we're just loosening them up until we get the belts loose. Now, get the belts loose. Have a hold of this fan when you take this last bolt out so it doesn't fall into your radiator, knock a hole in the radiator, and will end up costing you a bunch more money. Now we take these bolts down to the hardware store, the parts store, and match them up and get some shorter ones. Okay, we got our shorter bolts, so we'll get them put in this water pump pulley and get that done. Make sure you use a lock washer or some Loctite, but lock washer. Alright, our next step is to get the fan ready, and we're going to install it on the back side of the radiator as a cooler. So you actually have to take this nut off and flip the fan blade over and then tighten it back down, and then you'll wire this backwards, and that will make it as a cooler instead of mounting in front of the fan as a push. So let's get this flipped over and then we can mount it onto the radiator. Now we can mount it on the radiator. Alright, so we're going to mount the fan right here on the inside of the radiator, but we have to run the straps through the radiator and lock them from the other side. So first thing we need to do is take these brackets off the top so we can lean the radiator in. So let's get these taken off. Okay, so now we can get to the front side of the radiator. So let's move on to the next step and get the fan on there. Alright, we're going to attach the fan to the radiator using these provided zip ties. They go through the fan, through the radiator, come out the other side, and then you have a zip tie block on the other side. You also have these foam pads that go in between the fan and the radiator. So let's get this installed. I like to make my fan ride a little bit lower than higher because the top of the radiator tends to have less fluid in it. And it should be completely full, but it usually isn't. So we'll go a couple rows down. Centered. So now we got this going through the core, through the fins, and just gently push it through, just like that. Another one. So we're going through the same one, so we're level. Okay. Now we've got these locks. Hold the fan and lean in the radiator. Just take these, slide them over. Give them a little snug pull, and that's it. Come back here on the back side and we will trim the excess off of these. And just like that, the fan is mounted to the radiator. Get the camera, I'll show you. And this is where they come through the back. You can use brackets that come off of here if you need to, but I don't use them unless I absolutely have to. So let's move on to the next step. Alright, our next step is to wire in the relay control module, little control box. Just this little box, relay, and a bunch of wire. So, tells you what everything on here is. Red goes to battery, black to ground, yellow goes to the ignition, orange goes to the fan positive, green is if you're running an AC, and that's it. You can just mount it somewhere. It's got a little knob on here. You can turn this up or down to make your fan come on. This little probe goes in the top of your radiator, and that's what senses temperature. So let's get this installed. Okay, so we're going to mount the relay module over here. That way the probe can be installed in the radiator right by where the water comes in from the engine. That way we get the best temperature reading for it and the hottest temperature. So, first thing we're going to do, a couple of self-tapping screws, which I just dropped one of them. And we are going to mount this to the core support. Alright, and now the relay box is mounted solid. So, red wire goes to the battery. Yellow wire will go to the ignition. Now, the green wire is if you are running an air conditioner. When you turn the air conditioner on, it kicks your fan on automatically. You can also run this to a toggle switch and flip the toggle switch on and have your fan come on whenever you'd want to, if maybe it just doesn't want to come on for some reason. This could be a manual override, but we're just going to cut it and cap it off. Blue wire goes to a second fan. We're not using that, so we'll cut that wire and cap it off also. A little black wire is ground. Orange fan with fuse will go to the positive side of the fan. And the temperature probe will go down a few inches and over a few inches, and it will just go through the radiator. Alright, the first thing we're going to do to wire this thing is we're going to take this fuse they've got in here and we are going to cut it off. This is supposed to go to the battery over here, and the fuse is all the way over here, but that means all this wire is unprotected. You need to have the fuse over here where it goes to the battery. Either way, I don't like these fuses or this wire, so I'm getting rid of it. Alright, now we've got a good fuse holder. It's rubber, got a cap, waterproof. So, this will connect to the battery, and then I will put wire on that, run underneath the radiator and over here. So let's get that done. Alright, I got some wire loom, and I'm going to run it where I want it to be. Okay. I know that's long enough, so I'm going to go cut a piece of wire that is longer than this, so we can go put in. Alright, we got our power wire made and put in some loom, tape every few inches just to keep the wire from coming out. Done here. Into the battery cable. Okay. so the next thing I want to do is cut this connector off of the fan. You can use it if you want to, but it doesn't come with another end, so I mean you can buy the other end. Cut it off. Now, since we are running this fan backwards as a puller, not a pusher, it's actually going to be opposite colors wires. So the blue is going to be our ground, the black is going to be our positive. So I use these bullet connectors, that way you can still disconnect the wires and take the fan out with the radiator. So you got to make sure on the fan side that your positive has the exposed end. That way on the wiring side you will have a covered positive wire. So let's get these connectors done. Alright, that's the connections on the fan. The positive side, on the wiring we need the covered end. Now we can route this down and around where we need to go to get up over to the relay. So go ahead and connect it. Alright, so the other end of that red wire that we just connected to the fan for our positive connects to the orange wire with the fuse coming out of the relay box. Now you should always give a good pull. I mean, I'm pulling pretty hard on these wires. I mean, as many times as I've crimped wires and I know it's going to be secure, I still always check and make sure that it's tight. Anything outside, you need to make sure you wrap in tape or use heat shrink connectors, or both. Don't ever just twist wires and tape them. The train is being very noisy in the background today. There, now that is a solid connection that is watertight. Ground wire for the fan. Now we need to take the ground wire for the relay. Now I just got another self-tapping. This time it's a bolt, not a screw. Alright, there we go. Now our ground wires are strapped down and solid. The only thing we got left to do now is run the ignition wire and put the probe in the radiator and clean up the wiring, and that'll be it. So let's move on to getting this ignition wire done. Okay, so we have got our yellow wire hooked up to an ignition source inside the fuse box. Lay that over here out of the way. Ground wire is hooked up, power wire to the fan, fan ground, power wire through a fuse to the battery is hooked up, relay's grounded. All we've got left to do is get the probe into the radiator. Alright, to get the probe in, first thing we're going to do, take the zip tie, put a foam pad on it, through the front of the radiator. Down about 3 or so inches and over about 3 or so inches. Come through. Okay. The back side of the zip tie. There's a hole in it. probe to go through. Be very careful with this. Don't bend and break the wire. Don't bend the probe. Push this down to where the black heat shrink is and stop. Good. Take this other foam pad, stick it on here. Now we have to make a hole for the probe to go through. So, what we do, get some of the excess off. I'm going to mark this where the probe is going to go through. And we can make our hole that. Now the probe will go through. Okay. Okay, with that connection, everything is done. We could put a fuse in it, hook it up, and it is all hooked up and done. So now we just need to clean this wiring up, make it look good, make sure everything is connected good and tight and taped up, and that's it. So let's get that all done and then we'll test it.